All right, guys. So today we're going to be starting ancient Egypt. And I have this great little overview of ancient Egypt before we start the grapes. So I'm just going to read through it with you. And we're going to look at some of the vocabulary that we have on the side here. These are words that we're going to be looking at throughout the chapter. And then obviously the people we're also going to be looking at throughout the chapter. So this is a good little overview. And I want you guys to think about these questions as you read. Why ancient Egypt was called the gift of the Nile? How was ancient Egypt ruled? And why did ancient Egyptians build tombs and pyramids? So those are our three little discussion questions that we are going to think about as we go. So, the people of ancient Egypt. Imagine how difficult it is to grow food in a land that is always hot and dry. The people of ancient Egypt faced that problem long ago. Egypt is a hot, dry land in Africa. It gets little rain. The Nile River flows through Egypt. More than 7,000 years ago, people in Africa learned to use water from the Nile River to grow food. As more people began to farm together along the Nile, they developed a civilization of ancient Egypt. Egypt has been called the gift of the Nile. This is because the Nile River prevented Egypt from being a huge desert. Without the Nile, people in ancient Egypt would not have been able to grow crops. The Nile made it possible for the civilization of ancient Egypt to last thousands of years. The Nile is the longest river in the world. It is more than 4,150 miles long. Every summer in ancient Egypt, the Nile flooded the land around it. The floods left fertile soil on the land near the river. This soil was good for growing food. Farmers planted after the floods. If there was a lot of water in a flood, they could plant many crops. If there was not much water, they planted fewer crops. About 5,000 years ago, farmers found a way to use the Nile River to irrigate their lands. They brought water from the river to use on dry land in order to grow plants and food. The farms were better and larger when people irrigated. Farmers did not have to wait until after the floods to plant their seeds. The farmers learned to work together to bring water from the Nile to their farms. People made rules as they worked together. They began to live in villages. Soon, there were many villages. Around 3,100 BC, one king began to rule all of the villages in Egypt. Later, Egyptian rulers were called pharaohs. The pharaohs made laws for all the people of Egypt. People believed a pharaoh was both a god and a ruler. The pharaohs were very powerful. All farmers had to give some of their food to the pharaohs. Most of the pharaohs were men, but one of the greatest pharaohs was a woman. Her name was Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut helped Egypt become a very rich country. She sent ships to trade items with other countries. Many large buildings were built when Hatshepsut was pharaoh. Since Egypt has little rain, there are few trees. The ancient Egyptians did not have much wood for building. Instead, they often used mud bricks. The Egyptians also cut stone blocks to make buildings. Strong metal tools helped the Egyptians cut stone. The people of ancient Egypt built large stone buildings called pyramids in the desert. These buildings were built for pharaohs. Inside the pyramids were tombs for the dead. One of the most famous tombs was built for the young king Tutankhamun. His tomb was not in a pyramid. It was cut deep into rock. Why did the Egyptians work so hard at building these tombs and pyramids? They built them because they believed that people lived again after they died. They believed that the dead needed a good place to spend their next lives. Egyptians put the bodies of the dead inside tombs. They left food, water, and clothing in the tombs for the dead person to use in the next life. They painted pictures of people on the walls of the tombs. The Egyptians believed that the people in these pictures would be friends with the dead person in the next life. Archaeologists have learned about the life in ancient Egypt from paintings, foods, and other items inside the tombs and pyramids. Today, there are 35 major pyramids still standing in Egypt. The oldest pyramids are almost 5,000 years old. Many people in Egypt were slaves. Slaves were not free men and women. They were not paid for their work. Slaves were forced to build pyramids for the pharaohs. Thousands of slaves built pyramids. They built many other buildings too. The Egyptians were some of the first people to write their words. At first, they used tiny pictures to show the words. They needed many small pictures. Then they wrote small signs to show different sounds and ideas. Egyptian writing had more than 800 signs. Archaeologists have found papers and stones with Egyptian writing. We have learned much about the ancient Egyptians by reading their writing. Ancient Egypt was a great country for more than 2,800 years. As time passed, the pharaohs had less power. Other people gained control of the land, and the pharaohs lost their power. Egypt became weak. Then other countries ruled Egypt. I will do chapter 2 in a minute, and that's going to be on a separate video. So this was just the introduction for today.